Hey viewers and viewers, my name is General Red Strategist and welcome back to Stay Being Hunted. This is episode 337. So, we are here. Phil joined me in the last episode to discuss all things horror with me as I continued on with my brute force challenge. Now, on the North Island, we've already got 2 device pieces, 1 more to find on here, and then we can move on to another island and continue the challenge elsewhere. So you guys out there are all doing very well and you are enjoying this attempt number 2 at this challenge. So like I say, Phil joined me for the last episode. We talked about everything horror related. That is a dog who's charging towards my position, as one might expect. Let's get my guns out ready. In fact, actually, why am I stealthing? There's no reason for me to stealth. Where are you? Hello? Oh, there you are. Hello. Got him. He's dead. See, there was no need to stealth that. I could just friggin' potshot the guy like that. I should be using my super duper scanner device to try and locate this last piece on this island, I do think. So like I say, I hope you guys out there are all doing very well and that you're enjoying the challenge. It's a Friday evening, as of when I record this. It's actually 25 past 8 in the evening. It's gone dark, of course. Late September it is when I record this. By the time this video goes out, there will probably be sometime in early October, just judging from my current schedule. Okay, let's just turn that off so it's not the constant flat tone in your ears like that. But something actually interesting that I was thinking about just before I started this, and which I think probably will make for an interesting topic of conversation. So, you know how a while back I did a So You Being Hunted episode that was titled On Cybersecurity, something like that. It was basically about cybersecurity and stuff like that, essentially. I was actually just reading a bit into kind of cybersecurity news recently, and there's an interesting little news story, and I know I normally don't really delve into political topics here on General Red Strategist, but this one was actually kind of interesting. So, I did that video quite a while back on cybersecurity where I talked about that, because, cybersecurity is a big sort of topical issue of today. And the thing is, in my own sort of job field in academia, in my sort of subject area, which is kind of politics, international relations, security studies, that kind of thing, cybersecurity comes up a lot as a very big topical issue. Students love to talk about that, and it is, it's a massive issue if you're a security analyst, or say you're let's say a civil servant working for an organisation like the Ministry of Defence or the Foreign Office. In fact, it's a big topic really if you're in any sort of industry, given how big of a problem things like cybercrime and stuff like that are. But in academia, one of the big sort of well, not I was going to say a big debate. One of many sort of big debates in academia at present around sort of cybersecurity is this idea of cyber war, and whether such a thing can truly be said to exist. Now, some of you may be sort of thinking there, what do you mean, does it exist? Surely it does, right? There's been, accusations of countries that conduct things like cyber espionage, things like that. But what's just interesting about this thing is that cyber war is a kind of contested term in academia. Some academics and researchers say that such a thing does exist and that we're already there, we've already seen it. But there are other scholars within the field who disagree and say that cyber war is a bit of a dangerous term to be using, because actually a lot of what we are classing as examples of cyber war, do not fit traditional definitions of what war actually is. It's an interesting debate, and I know like I say, we're getting into quite a political subject here, which I don't normally do on the channel, but yeah, fuck it. I think it's, like I say, it's an interesting one. So, when we talk about war from a sort of academic point of view, usually we tend to refer to historical writers like Karl von Clausewitz and people like this, who, in some of their works, they wrote about what war is and strategy and things like this. And if you take someone like Clausewitz, he argues that war is essentially the extension of politics, or rather it's the continuation of politics by other means, namely military force. And so, depending on who you read, definitions of war sometimes hinge upon this idea that war must always kind of have sort of physical casualties. There must be people who die from it, or people who suffer, because war is inherently violent, things like this. And that's where some of the kind of confusion, or well, not confusion, but rather some of the debate over whether cyber attacks and things like this actually constitute acts of war. This is where it kind of comes from, because although we have seen cyber attacks in the past that have resulted in physical damage, things like that, people talk about examples like the Stuxnet virus back in 2012, I think it was, 2011, 2012, whenever it was, which attacked the nuclear program in Iran. And caused actual physical damage to nuclear centrifuges. As of yet, there's, I don't think, ever been a cyber attack that's actually resulted in a human casualty, i.e. a human being actually being injured or even killed. And so that's one reason why some scholars argue that cyber war, we have not actually seen it yet, because we haven't actually seen any human casualty. But of course, many experts agree that it's not so much a case of if it happens, it's more a case of when it happens. And so the kind of debate so far seems to be swinging heavily towards the cyber war is going to be a real phenomenon type of thing. Because as of recently, there has been a case actually in Germany which I noticed in the news this morning when I was, getting up and having my breakfast just before I started doing all my tasks for work and all that. So apparently, I think it's in Dusseldorf, there's actually been a case of a cyber attack that's hit a hospital, and the result of that is that presumably the hospital system's all locked up, and there was a woman who needed an urgent surgery, something. I'm not entirely sure of the exact specifics, because I don't know if they've been kind of released to the public. But in essence, there is a woman who needed an operation, an emergency operation. Thanks to the cyber attack, it's looking like she didn't get that operation. The authorities in Germany tried to move her to another hospital as fast as they could. Unfortunately, they weren't able to do so in time. And sadly, this woman in question has died. And so now the German police are apparently investigating this as an example. But what they're investigating it, and their line of inquiry, or one of them at the moment, is that this woman effectively died as a direct result of the actions of cyber attackers, of hackers. And if they come to that conclusion that the cyber attack can more or less be attributed, her death can more or less be attributed to that cyber attack, that I think will be an interesting case, because it'll be the first time, I think, as far as I'm aware, that we will have seen a cyber attack leading to an actual human death, an attack in cyberspace having not just kinetic damage but actually a human cost, which is very interesting. Now, of course, that's just one little aspect of the debate over cyber war. There's other elements to it. Some people would argue that you don't need the human casualty for it to be classed as an act of war. Some people would say that kinetic damage alone to things like infrastructure or whatever, and perhaps just the potential for human casualties constitutes an act of war, even if you don't actually get the human casualty. And I kind of I very much agree with that, because here's the thing, right? Actually, I'll just take the boat south, and then I'll continue talking. Hold on one sec. And we're back in, right? So just continuing what I was saying there. So there's been this kind of side to the debate that says that because we haven't seen actual human casualties to cyber attacks, should we really argue that they are forms of warfare? But I'm of the opinion that yes, it can constitute an act of warfare, because if there is that potential for human casualties, then that's to me saying it's not like an act of warfare would be like saying that, let's say you kind of sent a bomber over an enemy country, you dropped a load of bombs on a urban centre in their country, but fortunately nobody was in the area where the bombs hit, and so as a result there weren't any human casualties. That's like saying that's not an act of war. Well, no, it is. But I suppose, obviously, what makes it problematic is the fact that cyber attacks are hard to attribute to whoever did them, whoever carried them out, and things like this. And that's why it kind of challenges the sort of conventional aspects of warfare, because often with conventional warfare, where you have these kind of clearly marked military forces and whatever else have you, it's easier to make attribution. It's easier to attribute someone. It's easier to attribute certain hostile actions to whoever's carrying them out. But with cyber attacks, it's much, much harder than that. Hence why there's all this kind of confusion. But yeah, so there's an interesting debate about cyber and all that and warfare. But that case in Germany, very interesting one. So it'll be interesting to see how that case develops. But that's just something that I really kind of wanted to talk about because I thought it was kind of interesting from an academic point of view, for someone kind of in my sort of research field or my sort of teaching area, as it were. Yeah, so like I say, bit of a political subject, but very interesting. Yeah. So that's the thing, cyber attacks always as a kind of a tool for certain actors to use to try and stay below the threshold at which you would get sort of like an armed response from the person you're subjecting to a cyber attack. Yes, it's always been kind of curious. It's always a very grey area. But that's the thing, about the world in which we actually live now. Teaching on the sort of courses that I teach on, you do talk a lot about concepts like hybrid warfare and stuff like this, where the boundaries between military and non-military action and things like this kind of really break down. But of course there's, a lot of contention around terms like hybrid warfare, for example. Some people argue it's a very new thing, other people question that and say, actually, is it really all that new? And personally, I'm more kind of in line with the latter school of thought. Okay, I'll just pause a second again. Alright, okay. So we're in here, like this, now. What was I saying? Yeah. So, in terms of, things like hybrid warfare are fascinating subjects, though, because it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, based on things that have happened in the world. But, again, there's a whole kind of debate over how new it is. Because at the end of the day, the way people understand hybrid warfare, in essence, it's this kind of blend of conventional and non-conventional approaches to war making or war fighting. Usually, it utilises conventional military assets alongside unconventional military approaches, perhaps the use of irregular forces, as well as other levers of power, such as economic, diplomatic, cyber instruments, things like this, to kind of create this very complex, murky situation. But here's the thing, right? Even though some of the tools of hybrid warfare today may be fairly new, like cyber, stuff like that, going back into that whole academic debate, how much of that is, how much of the basic essence of hybrid warfare is actually new? That idea of using conventional and unconventional means to target an enemy's weaknesses, is that not something that has always been a constant in warfare? I mean, for example, there are some actors in the world who try to use disinformation online, things like that, to try and murky the waters, to put it that way, to sort of delay and confuse an adversary's response cycle. But again, is that a new thing? Or is it just that now we have cyber tools, the social media, which enable us to disseminate that disinformation much, much quicker and in greater volume? Because here's the thing, right? You go back to the Second World War, for example. Flipping in the early years of the war, the British were using leaflet drops over Germany in the earliest stages, dropping propaganda to try and sow discord within Germany. I mean, whether it was successful is another question altogether, but in some respects it's similar to the kind of propaganda disinformation efforts that you see nowadays on social media and internet, things like that. So, like I say, is it truly new? Arguably, hybrid warfare is not really that new. so we have to be a little careful in perhaps ascribing too much significance to it. Okay, yeah. I've been recording for quite a few minutes there. Had quite a rambling discussion, I will put it that way. Tell you what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap up here. So, this was episode 337 of So You're Being Hunted with me, General Red Strategist. We got into a real interesting topic there, but I couldn't help myself, you know. I sometimes think maybe I'll talk more. Oh god, just not my microphone. Maybe I'll talk more about the sort of subjects that I deal with in my job. Not in terms of, you know, because I've talked about things like academic essay writing and stuff like that before, which is connected to obviously my job, but what I mean is actual sort of subject content that in my sort of everyday job I have to engage and deal with, because it's very interesting stuff. I'm sure people will probably be interested in hearing more about it. So yeah, maybe I'll do that then in future episodes, everybody. So, other than that, I'm going to wrap up here. Facebook and Twitter links down below, along with the link to my propagandist channel for anyone interested. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. But in the meantime, I'll see you in the next part. Goodbye, everybody. But where are the other 4? Because the ending screen said there were 8. 8 in total. Fine, maybe in the barrels or anything. It's just water, though, isn't it? Flowing water, somehow. Oh god, shut the hell up! Jeez. Good god. Alright, I'm getting out of this area. Oh, just make it stop. Jeez. Oh, good lord. Finally, we've vacated the 7th circle of Dante's hell, everybody. We're out of there. Just when you think the bugs in this add-on can't get any more amusing.